Welcome to Vivid Verses. If our words resonate with you, please subscribe, tap the like, and share your thoughts and your feelings in the comments. Now let's begin. The zipper of the Samsonite snagged on the inner lining, a sharp ZZT that cut through the low, electric hum of the refrigerator. I stood in the doorway, a ceramic mug warm against my palm, watching Mara wrestle with the luggage. She yanked the tab. The fabric tore, a small, distinct sound like a dry leaf being crushed. "It stuck," she said. She didn't look up. Her hair was falling over her face, a curtain of chemically straightened chestnut obscuring her expression. "I see that." I didn't move to help. The coffee in my mug was black, bitter, and 10 minutes past hot. I took a sip anyway, letting the lukewarm liquid sit on my tongue before swallowing. "Are you just going to watch?" She looked up then. Her eyes were rimmed with red. Visine clear, but the skin around them was puffy. A performance of distress. "You wanted to do this yourself," I said. My voice sounded foreign, scraping against the walls of the kitchen. Autonomy. That was the word of the week, wasn't it? Mara abandoned the zipper. She stood, smoothing the front of her blouse. It was cream silk, sleeveless, expensive. Not the kind of thing you wear to sit in a yurt in the Catskills and meditate on your chakras. It was a brunch blouse, a be-seen blouse. "Caleb, don't," she said. She adopted that tone she used when training the dog. Firm, level, patronizing. We agreed. No guilt trips. 15 days. I just need to recalibrate. For us. For the longevity of us. Recalibrate. I rolled the word around. It tasted like aluminum foil. "I feel like I'm suffocating," she said, gesturing vaguely at the stainless steel appliances we're still paying off. "I need to know where Mara ends and Caleb begins. You get that, don't you? It's healthy. My therapist says it's essential for individuation." 15 days, I repeated. 2 weeks. It's a blink. We'll be better for it. She grabbed the handle of the suitcase. The wheels were misaligned. They clattered unevenly on the hardwood, a rhythmic thud-click that grated on my molars. She paused at the door, her hand on the brass knob. She didn't kiss me. She didn't hug me. She reached out and patted my bicep, 2 quick, dry taps. It was the way you touch a stranger's car to check if the paint is dry. "Water the ferns," she said. Then she walked out. The morning heat rushed in through the open door, heavy and wet, smelling of cut grass and exhaust. The screen door slapped shut, vibrating in the frame. I stayed in the kitchen. I watched through the wire mesh as she loaded the trunk of her Audi. She checked her reflection in the side mirror, rubbed a smudge of lipstick from her tooth, and got in. The engine turned over, a refined German purr, and she backed out of the driveway without looking at the house. I stood there until the sound of her tires faded into the neighborhood drone of lawnmowers and distant construction. The house didn't feel empty. It felt like it was holding its breath. The first 48 hours were a study in noise. Without Mara's podcast playing in the shower, without her phone calls on speaker in the living room, without the constant clatter of her rearranging things that didn't need rearranging, the house developed new sounds. The refrigerator compressor had a rattle I'd never noticed. The third step on the stairs groaned under my weight. The HVAC system sighed every time it kicked off a long pneumatic wheeze. I tried to be the man she claimed she wanted. The supportive partner. The guy who respects boundaries. Give her space, I told myself. She's burnout. She's confused. I channeled the anxiety into labor. I mowed the lawn. I didn't just cut the grass. I edged the sidewalks with a razor straight line. I pruned the hydrangeas until my forearms were scratched and itching from the sap. I went into the guest bathroom and fixed the dripping faucet that had been plaguing us for 6 months. I disassembled the handle, cleaned the threads with a wire brush, and replaced the washer. I tightened the nut until the metal groaned, satisfied only when the rhythmic plink-plink ceased. I ate sandwiches over the sink for dinner. Ham, No cheese, dry bread. I didn't turn on the TV. By the afternoon of day 2, the silence began to itch. It wasn't peace. It was the quiet of a waiting room before diagnosis. I sat on the back deck. The wood was hot enough to burn skin, radiating the day's accumulated sun. I nursed a beer, the bottle sweating onto a table I'd been meaning to seal since last summer. A bead of condensation rolled down the glass and pooled on the gray, weathered timber. My phone sat face down next to the bottle. We had rules. No calls. No texts. Emergency only. Absolute zero contact. To let the silence speak, she'd said. But she hadn't said anything about social media. My thumb hovered over the icon. It was a compulsion, a loose tooth I couldn't stop tonguing. Just checking, I lied to myself. Just making sure she got there safe. The roads in the mountains can be tricky. I tapped the app. The feed refreshed. A barrage of noise. An advertisement for ergonomic office chairs. My cousin's baby smeared with squash. A political rant from a guy I went to high school with who now sold crypto. And then Mara posted 42 minutes ago. The photo wasn't of a yoga mat. It wasn't a sunrise over a misty mountain ridge. It wasn't a bowl of granola. It was a close-up of a wine glass, the stem delicate, filled with a deep amber liquid that caught the ambient light. An orange peel twisted artistically on the rim. In the background, soft-focused but unmistakable to anyone who actually lived in this city, was the exposed brick wall and the distinct filament bulb lighting of the Vesper. I knew the place. It was downtown, 40 minutes from our driveway, not 3 hours north in the Catskills. But it was the foreground that stopped my heart. Across from her drink sat another glass, and resting on the dark, varnished wood of the table, casually near the base of that glass, was a hand. It was a male hand, tan. The fingernails were manicured, clean, square, buffed. He was wearing a gray suit jacket, the fabric looking like fine wool even in the low light. A crisp white cuff peeked out, and on the wrist a watch. It was heavy, silver, with a complicated blue face. A Breitling Navitimer. I stared at the screen. I didn't own a Breitling. I wore a Fitbit with a cracked screen that I'd taped over. The caption consisted of 3 emojis: clinking glasses, sparkles, shushing face. Cheers. Sparkles. Shush face. I zoomed in. The pixels blurred, but the reality sharpened. The angle of the shot was intimate. The drinks were full. The lighting was romantic. Recalibrate, I whispered to the empty yard. A blue jay shrieked from the oak tree, a jagged, ugly sound that tore the air. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. A coldness started in the center of my stomach, a block of ice sliding down into my guts, numbing the nerves. The shaking in my hands, a tremor that had been there since she left, stopped instantly. The confusion evaporated. The hope, that pathetic little flame I'd been cooping my hands around, snuffed out. It was replaced by a clarity so sharp it felt like a headache behind my eyes. She hadn't gone north. She hadn't gone to find herself. She'd gone to audition my replacement. I looked at the timestamp again. 45 minutes ago. She was probably on her second drink, maybe laughing at something he said, that specific tilt of the head she used to do with me, exposing the line of her throat, making herself look vulnerable. I stood up. The chair legs scraped violently against the deck, a screech that made the neighbor's dog bark, a sharp, rhythmic yapping. I walked into the kitchen, the screen door banging against the jamb behind me. The house looked different now. It wasn't a home. It was a stage set. The throw pillows she'd agonized over, the expensive espresso machine she never learned to use, the framed print of the Amalfi Coast we'd never visited. Lies. All of it. Just set dressing for a play that had closed. I went to the pantry. Bottom shelf. Behind the recycling bin. A box of heavy-duty contractor bags. The black plastic kind. 3 mil thick. Tear-resistant. I took the whole box. The stairs creaked under my boots. I took them two at a time, fueled by a dark, rhythmic energy. I started in the bedroom. The air here still smelled like her. It was cloying now, a mixture of lavender laundry detergent and that sandalwood perfume she sprayed in the air, never on her skin. It felt suffocating, like inhaling cotton. I snapped the first bag open. It made a loud crack like a whip. I walked to the dresser. I didn't fold. I didn't check pockets. I pulled the top drawer out, her delicates, and upended it. Silk, lace, nylon. It cascaded into the black void. I shoved it down, compressing the fabric until the bag was taut. Next drawer. T-shirts. Yoga pants she bought for the studio membership she used twice. Rip. Stuff. Tie. I moved to the closet. This was harder. These were the clothes I knew. The blue dress she wore to her sister's wedding. The oversized sweater she used to wear on rainy Sundays before she started needing space on Sundays. I grabbed armfuls of hangers. The plastic hooks tangled, snapping. The friction of satin against velvet made a sound like skin rubbing against skin. I didn't bother taking them off the hangers. I jammed them in, the sharp plastic edges poking against the black polyethylene, threatening to pierce it. I didn't care. I cleared the rack. It took 3 bags. I moved to the nightstand. Her books, self-help titles about unleashing your inner goddess and radical selfishness. The half-finished journal. The ceramic jewelry dish. I swept it all into the sack with a forearm. A pearl earring skittered across the floorboards and vanished under the bed. I let it go. Let the dust bunnies have it. Then, the bathroom. This was the intimacy that hurt the most. The toothbrush standing next to mine. The myriad creams and serums in glass bottles that crowded the counter, leaving me a 3-inch square for my razor. I hesitated for a fraction of a second, holding a jar of night cream that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I looked at the label. Promotes rejuvenation. I thought of the Breitling watch. The shush emoji. I dropped the jar into the bag. It made a heavy, wet thud, cracking against something else inside. I cleared the counter. Makeup brushes, hair ties, half-empty prescription bottles, the retinol, the toner, the exfoliator. I swept the shelf in the shower, grabbing the shampoos and the razor. The razor was still wet. Within an hour, the room was stripped. The closet gaped, a hungry, empty mouth. The dresser drawers sat askew, hollowed out. The bathroom counter was stark white, smelling of bleach and finality. 7 black bags sat in the center of the Persian rug. They looked like body bags. I was sweating. My shirt stuck to my spine. I wiped my forehead with the back of my wrist, breathing hard through my nose. I felt light, untethered, like gravity had released its hold on me. I dragged the first 2 bags into the hallway. The plastic dragged against the carpet with a hiss. They bumped down the stairs, a dull thump, thump, thump that echoed through the foyer. I made 4 trips. By the time I hauled the last one onto the front porch, the sun was beginning to dip, casting long, bruised shadows across the lawn. The air was cooling, but the humidity remained a thick, wet blanket. Mrs. Gable was out walking her poodle across the street. She stopped. The leash went taut as the dog sniffed at a hydrant. She watched me, her eyes narrowing behind thick glasses. She'd always liked Mara. Mara brought her cookies at Christmas. Mara charmed her. I didn't wave. I wiped my hands on my jeans. I grabbed the first bag by the knot and heaved it. It landed in the center of the grass with a soft crump. I built a pile, a pyramid of refuse. I wanted it high. I wanted it undeniable. I stacked the heavy bags on the bottom, the shoes, the books, and the lighter ones on top. When the last bag was in place, I stepped back. It was ugly. It was aggressive. It was a scar on the perfectly manicured lawn I had mowed yesterday. I pulled my phone out. My hands were steady now. I framed the shot. The black plastic mountain against the green fescue. The house looming in the background, the front door firmly shut. Click. I opened Instagram. I selected the photo. I didn't need to draft the caption. The words were already there, burned into the back of my throat like acid reflux. Since you moved on so quickly, I figured your stuff should too. Don't bother coming inside. I tag her, right in the center of the pile. I hit post. The loading bar spun for a second, a little blue circle of destruction. Then it vanished. Done. I put the phone in my pocket. I didn't wait for the likes. I didn't wait for the text that would inevitably come screaming into my notifications in 3, 2, 1. I turned my back on the lawn, walked inside, and locked the deadbolt. The metal slid home with a heavy, final clunk. I threw the security latch too. I went to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and took out a beer. I twisted the cap off. It hissed. I took a long drink. It was cold. It tasted like iron and freedom. I leaned against the counter and waited for the knocking to start. The phone started buzzing 4 minutes later. It vibrated against my thigh like a trapped insect. I ignored it. I walked into the living room and sat on the leather armchair, the one she hated because it was too bulky and disrupted the flow. I put my feet up on the coffee table. Boots on the wood. No coaster. Buzz. 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 It wasn't just text now. Calls. I pulled the device out and looked at the screen. Mara Mobile. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then again. Mara Mobile. Then a text. Caleb, what the F? Then another. Pick up. Then a call from a number I didn't recognize. Probably the guy with the watch. Or maybe the restaurant landline. I silenced the phone and set it on the armrest. The screen lit up every few seconds, a strobe light of panic illuminating the dark living room. Message from Mara. Are you insane? Message from Mara. My grandmother's necklace is in there. Message from Mara. I'm calling the police. I took another sip of beer. The necklace, right? It was probably in bag 4, tangled up with the spin class leggings. She hadn't worn it in years. She said it was too old-fashioned. Now suddenly it was an heirloom. The doorbell rang. It wasn't a polite chime. It was a leaning, desperate press. Ding-dong, ding-dong, ding. I didn't move. Fists hammered on the wood. Caleb, open the goddamn door. It wasn't Mara. The voice was too deep. I stood up, slow and deliberate. My knees popped. I walked to the window and peeled back the edge of the curtain just an inch. A man was standing on my porch. It was Marcus, Mara's brother. He looked red-faced, sweating in his polo shirt. He'd clearly run from his car, which was parked haphazardly half on my driveway, half on the grass. He pounded on the door again. I know you're in there. I can see the lights. I unlocked the deadbolt, but kept the chain on. I opened the door 3 inches. Marcus, I said, what the hell is this? He gestured wildly at the lawn, his arms sweeping across the vista of black plastic. Mrs. Gable called Mom. She said you've lost your mind. She said you're having a breakdown. I'm decluttering. Decluttering? You threw her life on the grass. It looks like a garbage dump out here. She left her life 2 days ago, I said. I'm just forwarding the mail. She's at a retreat, Caleb. She's trying to fix her head. She's fragile. Ask her about the Vesper, I said. Ask her about the Pinot Noir and the Breitling. Marcus froze. His mouth hung open slightly. He blinked, the anger stalling out as the specific details hit him. He looked at the bags, then back at me. What? Check her Instagram. Or did she delete it already? I took a screenshot just in case. Marcus pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking slightly. He swiped, tapped, and stared. His thumb hovered, scrolling. He looked at the timestamp. He looked at the location tag. I knew she was too arrogant or too drunk to turn off. The color drained out of his face. He looked at the photo, then at the reality of the bags on the lawn. She told us she was in the mountains, he muttered. She said there was no cell service. She lied. Who is that? He pointed at the screen, at the manicured hand. I don't know, but he could buy her new clothes. He clearly has the budget for it. I went to close the door. Wait, Marcus said, jamming his foot in the gap. He wore loafers. You can't just leave it there. It's going to rain tonight. Forecast says clear skies until Thursday. Caleb, come on. This is nuclear. You're incinerating everything. She pressed the button. Marcus. I just watched the launch. I kicked his foot, not hard, but enough to dislodge it from the jam. Take the bags if you want. Put them in your car. Or don't. I'm changing the locks tomorrow. Caleb. Goodbye, Marcus. I shut the door. I threw the deadbolt. I listened as he stood there for a moment, breathing hard. Then I heard him curse a low, defeated sound. He walked off the porch. I watched through the peephole. He didn't load the bags. He stood by his car, made a call, shouted something at the phone, and then drove away. He left the bags. I went back to the armchair. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a dull ache in my shoulders. The silence of the house returned, but it was different now. It wasn't waiting anymore. It was empty, truly empty. I picked up my phone. The notifications had piled up like snowdrifts. Mara, I'm coming home. Don't you dare touch anything else. Mara, it was a meeting, a business meeting. Mara, he's a potential investor for the boutique. Mara, you're acting like a child. I typed one reply. My thumbs moved coolly over the glass. Meetings don't happen during a marriage pause, and business partners don't hold hands with the flash on. I hit send. Then I blocked her number. I sat in the dark, watching the shadows lengthen across the floor as the sun finally died. The air conditioner kicked on, a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. It felt like the house was purring. I finished the beer, set the bottle on the floor, and waited. She arrived at 9:45 p.m. I heard the Audi before I saw it. She took the corner too fast, the tires squealing on the asphalt. The headlights swept across the living room window, blindingly bright, before cutting off. I didn't get up. I stayed in the armchair, in the dark. The car door slammed. Then the sound of heels clicking rapidly on the driveway. She wasn't running. She was marching. She didn't knock. She tried the handle. It rattled locked tight. Caleb. Her voice was shrill, pitching up at the end. It wasn't the voice of the composed woman who wanted autonomy. It was the voice of someone who had lost control of the narrative. Open this door. Right now. She pounded on the wood. I sat still. I could imagine her on the other side. The silk blouse, probably sticking to her back in the humidity. The hair frizzing. My stuff is on the lawn, Caleb. The neighbors are watching. Let them watch, I said, though I knew she couldn't hear me through the heavy oak door. She moved to the window. She pressed her face against the glass, shielding her eyes with her hands to see inside. I saw her silhouette, a ghost against the streetlights. She spotted me sitting in the chair. I see you, she screamed. I see you sitting there. You pathetic, immature prick. I took a slow breath. It was just a drink, she yelled through the glass. We didn't even sleep together. Does that matter to you? Does the truth matter? I looked at her shadow. We didn't even sleep together. As if that was the line. As if the betrayal wasn't in the deception, in the planning, in the pause designed to let her test drive a new life while keeping me in the garage as a backup. You agreed to the break, she shouted. You agreed. I stood up then. I walked over to the window. I stood right in front of it, inches from her face on the other side of the glass. She flinched back, startled by my sudden proximity. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the panic in her eyes, but it wasn't panic about losing me. It was panic about losing the house, the stability, the image. She looked at the bags on the lawn behind her, then back at me. Caleb, open the door, she said, her voice dropping, trying to find that manipulative softness again. Let's talk. We can fix this. I'll explain everything. He's nobody. He's just a distraction. A distraction. I reached out and grabbed the cord of the blinds. Caleb, don't. I pulled the cord. The blinds rattled down, shutting her out, hiding the silhouette. Caleb, She slapped the glass with her open palm. I turned around and walked away. I went upstairs to the guest room. I couldn't sleep in our bed. Not tonight. I lay on the twin mattress, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the yelling continued for another 10 minutes. Then silence. Then the sound of zippers. She was rummaging through the bags on the lawn. I heard the plastic rustling. She was probably looking for her car keys or a charger. Eventually, the Audi started up again. She didn't drive away immediately. She sat there idling for a long time. I imagined she was texting the guy with the watch. Can I crash? My husband went psycho. Finally, she backed out. The red taillights washed over the bedroom, ceiling, and vanished. I closed my eyes. The next morning, the lawn was empty. I stood on the porch with a fresh mug of coffee. The sun was bright, harsh, bleaching the color out of the world. There was a massive dead patch in the center of the grass, a yellowed, matted square where the bags had sat, suffocating the fescue overnight. It looked like a grave. Mrs. Gable was out again. She waved this time, a tentative, small wave. I nodded back. A van pulled into the driveway. One locksmith's. A guy in a blue jumpsuit hopped out, holding a drill. You call for a rekey? He asked, squinting in the sun. Yeah, I said. Whole house. Front, back, in the garage. Lost your keys. Something like that, I said. He walked past me to the door. No problem. Have it done in an hour. I stood on the porch and drank my coffee. The air was still hot, still humid, but the heaviness in my chest was gone. The suffocation was over. I looked at the dead patch of grass. It would take weeks to grow back. I have to seed it, water it, tend to it, but it would grow back. It would be green again. I turned around and went inside to help the man drill out the old life. Thank you for listening. That brings today's story to a close. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. See you next time.